And this is Ed, and welcome to Global TV Talk Show. And this one is called Book Report. Here we are talking about writing and expressing ourselves. It could be online, it could be in space, it could be in the cloud, or it could be on paper. With us is Dr. Ken Lloyd, who is an author of several books and writings. So tell us about the Dummies. Uh, this is for people like me who aren't technical, but we need to learn about very specific things having to do with HR and people management, right?
Yeah, it's a great brand. It's a part of Wiley Publishing, and they've done these Dummies books, and it's really, we all feel like dummies sometimes. We go, what do I do about this or that? It's not to be in a negative or pejorative sense, but rather, hey, here's some good hands-on information. It's current, bring you up to date, and my goodness, they have books on. You think of a topic, there'll be a Dummies book on it. And what happened with me is they came to me and, gosh, it's 15 years ago, and said, will you do one on performance appraisals and phrases? I said, of course. So I did performance appraisals and phrases for dummies. So it really went through the process of performance appraisal, which was very different 15 years ago from today. But it also, they really wanted to have phrases that managers can use, and a lot of them. So I wrote 3,200 phrases, and I think I worked my brain by doing it, because suddenly you start talking in phrases. Does a good job and tries hard, puts forth full effort, but could focus more clearly. Stop it. Just get back in. So anyhow, they came to me earlier this year and said, will you do an update on it, a new edition? I said, of course, because so much has gone on. It's so much more forward focus on development, focus on career development, working with a diverse workforce, and focusing on collaboration and agility and individual growth, and certainly getting away from the once a year annual appraisal with nothing else going on in terms of significant feedback. It's really switched over to what's called continuous feedback, regularly checking in managers with their employees, and more on a coaching and developmental kind of basis than simply being a disciplinarian or feedback. They even have the word that they use. There's feedback and there's feed forward. Feed forward being, how can we help employees develop? So really, that's what's going on there. They're a terrific company to work with, and we're moving along. They're going to bring the book out in December.
That's great. So do you have a front cover design yet? Do you want to show it?
I don't have it yet. I'm waiting to receive it from them, but you'll be the first.
We're going to feature you on the book report when it's ready. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're joined in the background by a new customer, a new friend, Noah St. John, and his AI is taking notes and recording this with my permission. Noah has been on the program, and I'll send you the interview we did a few weeks ago. It's good, fast-paced. And Mark Walker and I did a #2 interview. The first one was a couple of years ago. And this one was about his experiences in Guatemala, not only by himself, but with family. Mark, tell us about the book, and it's okay if you want to hold up that front cover.
Well, last time you and I spoke, you're right. That was 2 years ago. This was the book, My Saddest Pleasures. It talks about it's part of my yin and yang of travel series, talks about all of the horrendous things that have happened over the years in my trips and taking donors and professionals overseas. And just about 5 months ago, it received Best Travel Award. So it is a recognized book now. This latest is just came out, and it's a bestseller. It was a new best new release for Guatemala history and Central America travel. And this talks about some of my experiences after 50 years of travel and work in Guatemala. I've met a lot of interesting people. I've been to places where a lot of Guatemalans haven't been. And I've met some amazing people, Mayan leaders, advocates, poets, and I really profile them. I have a few amazing stories, like the making of the Kingdom of Mezcal, which is a fascinating story. The art was done by a Mayan artist, fascinating story. And I have maps, graphs, fact sheets, and other materials at the back of the book, a bibliography for people who want to learn more about Guatemala. So that's my third book. I've got a fourth one that's waiting, and I'm working on an essay right now. I also publish essays in literary journals, and that's going to be about traveling through Guatemala with my two granddaughters.
Okay, but let's go back to the Peace Corps days. That's when
Well,
it
that
all
was a
began,
while
right?
back. That
Yeah.
my first book was my memoir was Different Latitudes, My Life in the Peace Corps and Beyond. Now that was back in the 70s, and I was sent to the highest area of the country, right by volcano Tajamuco at 10,000 feet, and I almost died. And the Peace Corps decided to move me somewhere else, and that somewhere else was San Jeronimo, where I met my lovely Guatemalan wife, and we've had three kids. And I've worked and traveled around Guatemala for a good 50 years now. And that's been some of the inspiration for my travel and for my work, even though I've also been CEO, the VP for Make-A-Wish and the CEO for Hagar, which works with survivors of human trafficking. So I've traveled to different parts of the world. But this last book is I put together my best stories and the most inspirational people I've met in Guatemala. That's why I call it the Guatemala Reader.
Mark, I'm really honored to have you and your story on our programs again, and thanks for joining this edition of Book Report. I've made up I didn't make it up. The book report was something I dreaded and hated in grammar school, but here it is. Now I'm using it as part of the TV show to bring branding to very specific work efforts. So. Dr. Ken Lloyd has a Hollywood orientation, of course, PR, media, everything to do with that. It's all LA. And your orientation is completely different. Christian, you got published recently. So here you are in
Yes,
Book Report.
yeah, that was fast, right? Yeah, it's very modest though, but I did manage to get a blog post published on the worldwide ERC website, which is the biggest mobility website there is in terms of impact. So I was very honored. Unsurprising to you, Ken, and you, Ed, it involves my children heavily and their travel experiences. And the gist of it is, particularly if you work in mobility, but not just if you work in mobility, traveling with children and teenagers, particularly if things go wrong, will teach them to be more resilient and less entitled. And that's really what it is all about. I encourage people to spend money on traveling and experiences rather than on luxury goods, which all of us, and you, Mark, in Scottsdale as well, from what I know about Scottsdale, it's all about keeping up with the Joneses and the bigger car, and the higher lease payment, and so on and so forth. So trying to get away from this and, rather spend the money going to Paris.
Well, Scottsdale is much more than that. It's ranch land and cactus and golf courses.
Golf courses.
and swimming pools.
There you go.
So we happen to have a couple of investment condos in Scottsdale, actually right across from the Cactus Street Mall, which is part of the Paradise Valley commercial area, which is in between North Phoenix and Scottsdale. Center of Scottsdale is North Scottsdale, which is ultra rich.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
I say North Scottsdale then. I take back the rest of what I said about Scottsdale.
No,
but a lot of what you say, that's true in a lot of different parts of the country. My
Yeah.
secret was, Christian, is I got all three of my children in youth, Rotary Youth Exchange, and they all went abroad for a year, even though they spent a lot of time with us in Latin America and West Africa as part of my work. I was a country director in Sierra Leone and West Africa. So I'm a big proponent of getting the kids out there and letting them see the realities of the world so they don't have that feeling of entitlement. And that's the reason that we've embarked on the next stage of our yin and yang of travel, which is the grandkids. We've got 8 of them. So we've got some
Wow,
work.
congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
great. So, Christian, back to you and about the thing you just got published.
Yeah.
Do you want to read a little bit from that so we understand just how deep you get?
I don't have it in front of me, so sorry, I cannot do that.
Okay, it
But,
doesn't have to be word for word, just précis it.
Okay. So what I'm talking about, I can tell you about it. So what I'm talking about is 2 trips that I took with my wife and my daughters. One of them, the first one was going from, so Mark, I'm originally from Switzerland, but I live in Orange County. So we went to Switzerland, and from Switzerland, we did a mini vacation within a vacation going to Crete. And when we went back from Crete to Switzerland, the plane broke down, and they had to get another plane from Switzerland. So it's a good 4 to 5 hours away, which meant that we had to spend most of the night at Heraklion Airport in Crete. And, the kids learned there, stuff doesn't always work out the way they want it to. And planes break down, and then you just deal with it, figure out what your options are. And my older daughter, Natalie, for the first time in her life, I believe, drank 3 cappuccinos in a row because they were free. Then the second trip we took was more recently. It was going from LA to Paris with Air Tahiti Nui. And Air Tahiti Nui flies from Tahiti to LA to fuel up, freshen up the plane, and then to Paris. So the plane was full of French pensioners vacationing in Tahiti, which is French speaking, and they can pay with euros and all that. And they were stranded in LA. A lot of them didn't speak English, and they were very angry. And they demanded a new plane immediately. Air Tahiti Nui is a small airline, and in LA, they really don't have a whole lot of infrastructure, so they had to get a new plane as well. And they were very, very mad. So mad that the crew called the police. And there were 3 policemen standing there with, armed, the American cops, what the French pensioners probably only know from TV. And what I'm writing about is how my kids were just not all that fazed about it, but saw and observed all this behavior of the, alpha male daddies that are really showing it to the poor crew about demanding a plane right now. And somebody yelled that they would sue everyone and quoted some legal advice, which was bogus, was made up. And they just saw all this. They observed all this, just like they would in a zoo. I was reminded of gorillas,
So these
that
are
kind of thing.
French-speaking gorillas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oui, les gorillas français. No, the most entitled people were Americans. The French pensioners were just mad, passive, aggressive, and intimidated. And I did a bit of translation for some of them because I
Boy, that is a
figured they were really good.
cross-cultural journey. Wow.
Yeah, that's how we roll.
Oh, well, I'm glad you were published. First of all, I'm
Thank you,
glad
me
that
too.
you had the wherewithal to get all that on paper or typed,
Yeah,
and then get published.
yeah, thank you.
So ERC was the organization, Employee Relocation Council, to which we both belong. They had the smarts to publish it.
Thank you. Yeah, I offered them a bunch of topics. A lot of the topics I've talked about on this show, and bilingual children, and making sure that if you live in another country, how do you make sure that they speak both languages at least adequately, that kind of thing. And I offered them a range of subjects, and they said, yeah, whatever, all of these are good. So I chose that one.
What other topic is good or coming up next?
Well, if they have me again, I would love to do more about language and learning a foreign language that you need in order to communicate with your family that may not speak your language if you live in another country. I don't know, Mark, whether you've ever had that issue, but you know, it's really difficult to make sure that your kids grow up bilingual. A lot of people seem to be able to make it very effortless. In our case, it definitely wasn't. It was hard work. I mean, every Saturday morning, I would cart them off to German school for 3 hours, and they are both fluent, you know, with mistakes and errors and all that, but they're fluent. And the main goal was so that they could talk to my parents, their grandparents. My dad is almost deaf, speaks English because he learned it in the 50s in England, and my mom doesn't speak English. So in order to communicate with grandparents, they had to adapt. They had to learn it, German.
That's interesting,
Something I'd
Chrissy,
write about.
because we actually took the youngest 9-year-old granddaughter, went with her mother to Antigua to learn Spanish. And that's really one of the things that we're trying to promote. My wife's Guatemalan. We speak Spanish at home, and we always spoke Spanish with the kids, but it's not the same with the grandkids. So you really have to be assertive. You have to be thinking about that, and how do you convince them and motivate them to begin to learn a new language. And of course, we're in Arizona, where the Secretary of Education is doing everything he can to limit the amount of bilingual education, despite the fact we're on the border with Mexico.
Right.
So we have some work to do.
Nicely put. Yeah.
I think we have to support a competitor to that person and change the office holder.
No comment.
Anyway, so Christian, I give you not that you need it, but I give you my support and
thank you.
Okay,
I always need support.
to talk about in another article that you write for ERC or whoever about Gen Z. And you know, I can send you the transcript. I think I can still find it from that program that we recorded.
But with Natalie, with my older daughter.
Yeah, because that's the voice of Gen Z. So do you have Gen Z? You must have Gen Z in your household, Mark.
All my kids are gone. I've got grandkids now, so that's my focus right now. We had a 9-year-old and a 22-year-old that we brought on this trip, but our grandkids range from 5 years old to 23.
So we have a granddaughter who's 26 and working now here in San Diego. But that's it. Oh, also, yeah, we have James. James is now 11 years old in Pittsburgh.
So millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah,
between what the two of you just said, yeah.
So Ken, does the younger generation at work need to learn about dummies? You know, the concept that you have utilized in the past and will now coming up in the new book?
Yeah, again, Dummies is really saying for those who want to learn more about a topic that they don't know a whole lot about in a practical, hands-on, readable way, here is a book for you. And it can take some complex and detailed information, spell it out and make it easy. So I think virtually for all levels, whether you're an experienced manager, it's nice to take a look at what's gone on that's new in the field, or if you're just coming in, here's something you can read and get a quick study. And again, the Dummies books cover such a vast spectrum that it's a handy item to have. It can really help you, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time digging through extraneous detail that really is not going to help you do your job. This is far more practically focused. And I think that's a plus as well. That's how they've built the brand. And it's really quite a useful way to approach topics for people at work or hobbies or other interests. You can learn more about virtually anything through the books and the range of books that they have out there. So sure, it's great for Gen Z, millennials, as well as for those who are more experienced in the workforce. Here's a way to take a look at maybe some of the more technical stuff that our grandchildren can do better than we can. And maybe it'll help us learn some of this stuff too.
So what's interesting about your topic, Ken, is I was just thinking about how my daughters or their cohorts would approach learning about a new topic. And more likely than not, they would go on YouTube. What you're writing about is really hard to put on YouTube because you would have to put it in small chunks.
Sure,
and
but
what you just said is, putting it all together, that would be kind of tedious on doing that on YouTube. So
yeah,
great selection of topic.
Totally agreed. In fact, on the first Dummies book that I did, the first one on performance appraisals, we did a YouTube video with it and talked about some of the highlights, the points, particularly what to do and avoiding the major mistakes that go along with performance appraisals, and sort of introducing them to the book through YouTube,
Clever.
knowing that that's where a lot of it will start. But then if you're interested, and if the video has at all captured some of your imagination, that's, oh, maybe I should take a look at this. There's a lot going on here. But that's absolutely right. It's very, very much a visual approach that a lot of them will take. So we have to make sure that we hit that as well.
It's very smart to kind of segue over into the book.
Yeah.
In the past, you've written about the theme under employee relations, jerks at work. And so would you like to discuss that within the context of this conversation?
Sure. It's basically the idea is the subheading was how to deal with people problems and problem people. And we all face myriad people-related issues, whether we're dealing with coworkers or whether we are managers or being managed. Well, how do you deal with them? How do you deal with some of the more benign ones, the nonstop talker, the bragger, the credit stealer? And how do you deal with some of the more serious ones, sexual harassers, the bullies, those who are overly aggressive? And I mean, jerks is such a nasty term, but it's an attention grabber, and we all can relate to that. And in that sense, it's fine to identify, but let's have some practical hands-on steps and strategies and proper wording and actions in order to deal with them. So that was really my goal. I know the books that I've done sound like I don't like people. I did a guide, a KISS guide to selling. That's Keep It Simple, Stupid. That was KISS. Then a book on dummies, and then jerks at work. I have another book called Office Idiots. I sound like, you don't like anybody out there, do you? And actually I do. I just am far more focused on people working together and productively and identifying and effectively dealing with interpersonal problems and difficulties and differences that get in everyone's way. They interfere with our work, they interfere with our lives. So maybe there's some steps and strategies that would help with that.
So being connected to or adjacent to, and certainly impacted by Hollywood and screenwriting, script writing, sitcom kind of portrayals that are actual social interaction learnings, like the old, very positive Cosby Show. Okay, how you get along in a multiracial area, and kids and parents, and the gamut. It was, and like that show Veep, and then the Friends shows, and the old West Wing show. Just great writing, great acting, portrayal, but educational as hell, top flight education about those particular topics. So somebody must be out there developing a screenplay or an organization about Gen Z in the workplace, and then how the bosses benefit the workplace by learning from the Gen Z approach and mixing it up. I don't know. I'm just BSing you right now to generate you to talk.
Yeah, I think that's a great pitch. Maybe you should make it
Well, I can't do it
a
alone.
new series that features Gen Z and
You have experience doing that though, so that's why I'm talking. Maybe we get Paul Falcone to join us too.
yeah, very interesting. But that's what's out there. But maybe, as Christian said, it should actually be on YouTube, and maybe that's the way to do it. Not have to even go the whole route of pitching it, presenting, and studio, and then it's in development and so forth.
Yeah.
But to just go ahead and put it out there, I think it's a very interesting idea, and it would be educational as well as entertaining. It's kind of a nice combo.
I
So
would have to ask, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I would have to ask my kids whether something like that exists. I don't know, but what I do know is that Friends is very popular with Gen Z. And I know Angelica watches it. I've never really watched it. I mean, I know about it. I know who the characters are, but I never really watched it. My younger daughter, Angelica, 15, she watches it. And I thought, this is odd. But then again, she listens to 80s rock music. She's kind of different in that way. And the other day, I read an article that said that was one of the top shows for Gen Z. So Ed, there is something there about Friends and Gen Z. Cosby Show, for obvious reasons, not so much.
Yeah, very different, generational. Well, I thank you for being on this show called Book Report, and I welcome you to come back. And
Thank
we don't
you.
have to end this right now, but I just wanted to make sure, while I had your attention, to say thank you again, and helping me launch this series. There will be another one, and you'll be invited to participate in that.
Ed, can you tell us what ERC is, ERC is? Because you
Yeah.
and Kristen mentioned that, and I just want to mention there's another group. I was interviewed by a group called CIATAR, which is the Society of International Education, Training, and Research.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it seems
so
to me
did you
there's some
talk with?
similarity there as well. So I knew about them. I've had contact, but I haven't heard about the ERC.
Yeah, CIATAR is internationals under the not an umbrella, but associated by work and involvement with talent mobility, employee relocation management, and now nomad working. We're going to be joined by a new author, so stand by here. 1 second, Yvonne. So Worldwide ERC, Worldwide Employee Relocation Council, is 60 years old, used to be called just ERC. It's based in DC, Washington, DC, and it's a lobbying group as well in Congress for employee relocation, tax advantaged. Yeah, hi Yvonne, welcome. Everybody, this is Yvonne Qua, who's coming to us from France right now.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Welcome. She and I have known each other a couple of years. Yvonne, meet Christian Ter-Nedden.
We've met.
Yeah.
We've actually met.
Okay.
Not in
And
person, but virtually.
yeah, and
Yes, we have.
yeah, and also Ken Lloyd, Dr. Ken Lloyd, also from Southern California, and has a
Hi.
talent management background.
C'est un plaisir à faire votre connaissance.
I'm not sure she heard you. Okay.
That's my French.
Okay.
Sounded great.
And meet Mark Walker, who's based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yvonne and I were introduced by a Brit by the name of Andrew Elliman, who's with one of the world's largest relocation companies called AGS Worldwide, and he's a client of mine. And he introduced me to Yvonne. Yvonne has been on our program many times because of her work life as a trainer and advisor within the World Bank Group, World Bank Family Network, when she was based in Washington, and now when she's remote in Europe. Yvonne has also been an in-person speaker, and we met for the first time this past April in London. when I produced an in-person event inside the Global Trade Bank, HSBC, and we're doing that again, thankfully, this coming October 1st, and Yvonne will be joining us on faculty again inside HSBC. Mark Walker is an author, Peace Corps, deep experience, many years in Peace Corps in Latin America, particularly Guatemala area. Is that right, Mark? Did I say that right?
That's right.
Great.
Exactly. Guatemala.
So, Yvonne, in the bank, in the World Bank Family Network, did you have employees there whose background included Peace Corps work? I can't hear you.
We have in the
okay.
past. I mean, we
Yeah.
have in the past. I know hired people with a Peace Corps background. In fact, my first boss at the bank was, many years ago. Usually, a lot of them are Peace Corps just after university when they finish university, and they're before their first jobs or between bachelor's and master's, and they do come and make a career at the bank. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
interesting.
have I met any in my direct experience apart from my boss when I first started at the bank? Do I have spouses who have Peace Corps experience? That I would say no. I haven't, nobody's told me in the recent years, hey, I used to be with Peace Corps before I joined. But I do know we have hired people who have, my boss is now retired, of course. The first one that hired me is retired, but he was definitely ex-Peace Corps.
So Yvonne is also the author of a best-selling book called Whose Career Is It? Yours, Mine, or Ours? And it has to do with the dual career dilemma and some solutions. Yvonne, what this, I know you can't do this in 5 minutes, but what's some of the solutions to the dual career dilemma?
Dare I say it, there is no solution. It's just simply, if I'm honest, I think there are solutions which individual couples working with their organizations have to come to an agreement that this is what works for us. I mean, it is an ongoing dilemma that has not been solved because of the various elements of complexity. So in one sense, there is no solution. If there was, I think somebody would be selling it by now. But there are tools that can help you to work towards finding a solution for you. Now, sometimes the solution for you is not necessarily the solution for the organization. And sometimes the solution for the organization doesn't fit every individual either. So that's my 5-minute answer.
Yeah. Okay. Ken, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, it certainly is a complex problem. I'm wondering, Yvonne, if you're seeing it somewhat softened because of the opportunity for people to work remotely or even hybrid. So if one spouse moves, one partner moves, the other may be able to continue a career remotely just to take some of that pressure and heat off of it, and whose career is really the priority one. Is that happening more often now?
Yes, particularly depending on industry. I'm not necessarily talking about the bank, I'm talking industry-wide. Yes, I think that particularly in Western Europe, many people are going for split assignments or remote options. And then not so much remote, but hybrid, meaning I can go back.
Right.
If I need to for a quick meeting, if I'm based in Bonn and, my head office is, say, I don't know, London. If you need me, I can fly and I can go in for a week and I can come back, and it's making a lot. I do know, particularly for the foreign services of the different countries, everybody wants a European posting, because if you're European, that is, you want a European posting, because it doesn't disrupt anything. So if anything, split assignments are increasing more and more in the world of global mobility, because maybe there's no need to move anymore. Absolutely. I think it does help in one sense, but I think then it also produces a whole other set of split assignment issues. You know, with parenting, with couple communication, with benefit packages. Now, what do we pay? What do we pay for? You know, before, when it was the old traditional assignment, okay, we move everybody, boom, you all go. Now it's like, no. You know, I'm going, but they're not coming, and you know, so it produces a different, I think, a different set of challenges. But if you go back and say, does it solve the dual career problem? I think you're right, it softens it, of course, because now I have the option. I don't have to go. And if I have to go, I can work remotely. Or I may have the chance to work remotely.
So I've heard
So
stories that are, we'll call it horror stories, that from a personal point of view, where somebody has moved in the family and some others turn ugly, and all the bad things, all the ghosts from the closets in the past come out because this fear, the person who feels offended by that person leaving, relationship-wise, care-wise, unsolved mysteries, it's a mess. And so the duty to care, part of the company, HR, people policies, you know, we've already said this in a group setting, Avon, but what your role has been within the bank and writing the book and dealing with some people who we both know as examples in the book, talking about it, and what Heather has done in that special report with Permits Foundation that we talked about in London and before. This is where the solutions lie. It's just talking about it, get people to talk. And Zoom is certainly the way to go. Look at us. We're in different places, and all of us are seasoned Zoomers, but there are people who fight Zoom and don't like it. And it's amazing how many of them I've met who don't want to come on my show. Never mind pay me to do it. So it's really, and I'm not even offering to pay them to do it, although that's maybe someday that will be interesting to see what happens, but not yet. So I'm now with you, and you're in France, and I'm here in San Diego. Mark is in Phoenix area, Scottsdale, which is like 500, 600 miles from where I am. And now he's working with you in France. And then we have from LA, Ken and Christian. And so people can work remotely. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just how you adapt and how you communicate. That's my view. So I'm going to stop talking. So, Christian, you actually managed all of this.
Yeah, I was going to say my in my last position, my team was entirely virtual because we had during COVID given up our office, a very expensive office in Irvine, and my team was from Connecticut to all the way down to San Diego, your neighborhood, pretty much. And you know, you make it work. It's interesting to work with people for years that you've never physically met. A lot of people tell me once we do meet, or if and when we do meet, oh, I thought you weren't as tall because I'm 6'3", and I don't know why I get that a lot, but it's always funny because I'm expecting it and then it comes and then I'll laugh, right?
I know. But see, I can be shorter.
Right.
Oh,
It's
I
just,
can be.
so because we were talking about Zoom, that's one of the things that Zoom doesn't, just doesn't get right. But it is entirely possible. I've done it. I've onboarded people. I've interviewed people, hired people, because because I thought this is the greatest thing ever, but because it wasn't feasible any other way. Not only because of the cost of the office, but also because in global mobility, there aren't that many people in the world that do it. And sometimes you just got to hang on to the talent you got, even though they may be in different parts of the country. And of course, I talk to my parents every Sunday morning, and they sit near Switzerland, near Zurich, and I'm here.
Interesting. Mark, would you like to jump in?
Well, my wife and I dealt with this for many years, but that was during the period because she's a professional teacher. So she's taught in Guatemala and Bogota and Sierra Leone. But this was the period in my career where I was the country director and the head income generator. So we really never had any any problems or any issues in that regard between the two of us, because Lika knew that if we're going to another country, we'd find a new place in one of the English speaking schools, that sort of thing. Where we did run into some trouble, though, is when our oldest daughter we were in Sierra Leone, and she was going to have to go to school in England. And we didn't want to send her to a boarding school. And that's where I actually made a career change. And I became the regional director for CARE International. I set up their office in Denver. And I went from being, the CEO for an international group overseas, in-country director, to being a regional director and a professional fundraiser. And that's where I started my 35-year career as a fundraiser for different international organizations like Food for the Hungry and Make-A-Wish and Hagar and different groups like that. So that's where the rubber hit the road for us. And we decided we weren't going to start sending the kids over to Manchester to go to school, and we were going to stick together. And so that's how we dealt with it. I made the career change at that point.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that personal information. It really adds depth to this show. Thank you.
Can I add that? Thank you so much for sharing that, because it is exactly those kinds of choices. When it comes to dual career, I say it in my book. And when I think of myself, likewise, I had to smile to myself, because we also made my husband particularly took a hit in his career because we didn't want to send our children to boarding school. Yes. And therefore it goes back to that whole idea of what kind of a life we want, because once it becomes our career, you can't progress as quickly or as fast as if you're going on your own with no care and concern for anybody else. It's just like, what are my opportunities? And I'm just going at high speed. Once you have a partner, you want to do life with someone together, then I think that making time to move from me to we would I think have long-term benefits for everybody.
Yep.
And in that sense, I think the individual, the employee, can teach the organization something about, yes, I know you're moving me, but actually you're moving us. And that goes back to Heather's point about the psychological contract of making the implicit explicit, to say, hey, wait a minute, don't think it's just me. There's more to life than just me. I mean, there are other people I have to consider, who I want to consider, whose choices actually come to bear on this matter. So thank you for saying what you said.
Well,
Yeah,
if I,
Christian.
Ed, if I
Yeah.
could add one little piece to
Yeah,
the
sure.
story. Actually, when I was the head of the operation at Bogota, we had problems with one of the guerrilla groups, the M19. They threatened my life, and we had to pack and leave the country in 72 hours. So it
Wow.
has other repercussions as well. You know, you can imagine trying to get all of your, and of course, we couldn't even have, we didn't have time to pack. Somebody else packed it and sent it, and had to wait until I was reassigned to a different country. And and after that, somebody called and they said, you're going to Sierra Leone, and I had to pull out a map. I'd never heard of the place because my specialty is Latin America, but lo and behold, we were off to Freetown. So that's it
Wow.
can turn around quickly, and you've got a lot of decisions you've got to make that affect everyone.
So the decision to do that came as a result of you as CEO or leader, and that whatever you were doing ran counter to what the cartel wanted to do at that time.
Well, they weren't a cartel. It was a very the M19's a radical sort of liberation group that's against corporations and international groups from the outside. I was the country director for Plan International, which is a childcare organization. But the problem was with the employees, and they wanted certain benefits and things that not-for-profits weren't going to be able to provide, and they sued me. And actually, I was, they have the Napoleonic legal code there. So you are guilty until proven innocent, and the cases can take 4 to 5 to 6 years to be worked out. So I actually, when we left with 72 hours, turnaround, I left illegally. So it can get very complex. I had 3 lawyers that we were trying to deal with this situation and the legal code and all of this sort of thing. And I had to go into the court every once a week to give witness and this sort of thing. And actually, this was a decision that Plan International made because they were concerned about our personal welfare. I was going to hang in there, and that's another tough decision to make. But Plan made the decision, so we made a quick turnaround.
So Napoleonic legal system, that really hasn't been talked about, but it's really prevalent outside of the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really impacts, that's a whole other side of the legal consequences of movement, not just labor law or employment law or immigration law. And now you have this criminal law.
Mhm.
So did you ever run into that, Christian? Criminal law.
In as far as when I was a relocation consultant and we talked about immigration, for instance, with client contacts, I did bring up the Napoleonic Code, and I said, it's not this, Anglo-American system where you're innocent until proven guilty. It's the other way around, as Mark just said, which for a company means that not just all the legal issues, but just like Mark said, he lived it, the well-being of the employee and the family would be the first concern, right? Even if you're innocent, you don't want to be locked up in a foreign country in the prison system. And I just talked about that to raise awareness that people couldn't just assume that they would somehow sneak by or think about the Anglo-American stance of, well, as long as they can't prove it, I'm just going to do whatever I want, because it's not going to work that way. So I warned a few people. Yeah, I did.
Well, this is interesting. Ken?
As I listen to all of you, it's interesting also just to see that you're not just looking at yourself or one person individually. There's so much, just as you said, from as Yvonne said, from me to we. We're talking about how will this affect my partner, my spouse, my children. So we're making these decisions. It's not as if you're just out there, just as you said, footloose and fancy free. but rather connected on a deep level with those who are close to you and important to you. And I'm sure that shows in the way that you deal with your fellow employees, those who report to you. It's not all about me. It's much more about us. So let's do the right thing here. And I'm just very impressed to hear that, because that really sounds like that's the way to make this work, as opposed to saying, hey fam, I got this great opportunity. We're all going. The children, their schools, their friends, the spouse's occupation. That's a real formula for trouble. And what I also hear underlying this, I once heard this expression in a talk, and it ties in a little bit with what Christiane said, that it's not just bestowing gifts on children, but travel is an amazing gift for them. It's an educational gift. So the expression I heard, and I like it, is the gift of love rather than the love of gifts. And it just stayed with me as part of this. And that's really what I'm hearing here. And that's what's really bestowing on them. And I think to the extent that these kinds of relocations can be positive, that kind of consideration will really help accelerate the entire process.
Okay,
Thank you.
major
Can I
quotes
just
here.
say this,
Great.
Ed? Do
Yeah.
we have time, or are
Of
we
course.
at the hour?
No, this is
Back to the book, and maybe Ken, you would like to use it and tell me what you think. I have designed actually this framework called the CARE Code, which is clarify, assess, refocus, and explore. And under each of those categories, there are 3 critical questions that you should ask yourself. And this can be used in any context. I mean, probably, if you were talking to a child, you might make it less formal than what are your non-negotiables. Yeah, you can change it to, what's really going to be hard for you. Is there anything that you really don't want to do, depending on their age, And so this is having this framework for conversation. Now, I also say this in that I have had feedback from clients who have said that the most useful way the CARE Code's been used is actually for third parties, whether it's the relocation person, particularly the HR. Sometimes with couples, depending on what kind of relationship they have, and I can see, it gets a little bit tense to, what's important to you, and then you start sharing, and then, oh, you've always ignored that. And, you can see how the conversation can spiral down. I mean, that's not difficult, especially if the relationship, as I think Ed said earlier, when one person already feels aggrieved that it's not fair, I've been made to sacrifice too much. And then somebody turns around and says, well, what's important to you? I mean, it really sounds like, give me a break. You haven't listened to anything I said before anyway. Right. So, but as a framework, it is very useful. And I usually say to people, even if it's just a tool for you to think through, what are my non-negotiables? Let me assess this. What do I really want from life? And I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves from time to time, because change is so rapid. What I wanted 10 years ago, maybe I don't want it this year anymore because the environment has changed. Never mind whether I've changed. But I think the pace of change, So it's there, it's useful. You can download it on my website as well. So I leave it there.
Thank you.
So in my case, you and Ken know this. My wife, who's from Southern California, and I moved to Southern California from Switzerland without a job. None of us had jobs. But we did kind of exactly what you just talked about. We made the decision that it was more important to us to stay together. We weren't married then, but to stay together and to get out of Switzerland for a whole lot of reasons that I'm not going to go into too much, rather than to look out for our respective careers. Now, it helped that our careers weren't going anywhere at that point in time, so it was a good time. And of course, it helped tremendously that I won a green card in the green card lottery, which meant we could get married when we wanted to get married instead of getting married to get into the United States. So we married 3 years after we moved. But to me, this was one of the deciding moments in my life, because I decided, and Erin, my wife, decided, we're going to stay together no matter what. We're going to build a new life in another country. And we're not refugees. We're not economic refugees, and definitely not persecuted by anyone. But this is so important to us that we're leaving everything else behind. And we moved all our belongings. We moved to the moving company with a 20-foot container and lived with my mother-in-law for a few months until we had figured out jobs and where we should live so that our commute wasn't too bad. And then we started building up our lives here. So whenever I heard that, couples were breaking up or there were issues, just like you just talked about when I counseled relocating employees, we often talked about that. Now, it wasn't as sophisticated as your system, but I often tried to say, can you find out what's important to your spouse? I'm having this welcome call with you about the household goods shipment and about the destination services. But I really need to hear also what's important to her or to him, the other one who wasn't on the call, because at the end of the day, this will make my life better, because it will make the relocation more of a success, which will mean that you're happier, which will mean that I get a better satisfaction score. So it was something that we talked about a lot in some shape or form, that both parties need to be willing to do this together, or else there's going to be issues.
Thank you all. I've learned so much. I've been taking notes. A gift of love rather than the love of gifts. That's a winner.
Brilliant.
That's a winner. Also, the Napoleonic legal system, that's a hot topic from this moment forward. From me to we, the care code. Yvonne, this is magical stuff. Thank you. Mark, your story keeps getting better every time I have you on the show. So please come back. I wanna know what's next.
Yeah, true.
I'd be happy to, and I will say part of my yin and yang of travel, I've written articles about traveling solo, traveling in tandem, traveling with children. Now I'm working on traveling with grandchildren. Every time it's a whole new scenario, all new considerations. So each time I have a different travel list for each sort of cycle in life. So that's what I'm working on now, and maybe next time we meet, Ed, I can share a little bit more about that.
I'm going to make a note of that, because that is intergenerational communications.
Yeah.
Ken, would you agree that that hasn't been done on this TV show yet?
Yeah, I think that'd be a wonderful direction to move in. It's funny, as I listen to the conversation, and as you said, and all the interesting information that comes out about these books, I think of your show as being book report and book rapport, because there's this wonderful rapport among the participants, and that's what kind of comes to mind. It's such interesting convos that you always have, and certainly listening to Yvonne and to Mark and to Christian and to you, Ed, it's just so uplifting as well as educational and informative. And I thank all of you for the opportunity just to listen and to participate. It's been terrific.
You make my day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Come back.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
I echo what your sentiments, so I won't repeat because time is short.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be well, everybody.
Bye.
Very
Be well.
nice chatting with you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
That's uplifting.
Absolutely.